My name is Fadi, and welcome to Cold Trail's Diary. If you enjoy diving into the unsettling and the unexplained, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. I used to think my neighbor, Mr. Harrison, was a creep, a real weirdo. You know the type. Lives alone, curtains always a little too drawn, never a friendly nod when you pass him on the sidewalk. But his strangeness went beyond just being antisocial. It was predatory. Or so I thought. It started about a month ago. I'd be in my living room, maybe reading a book, or just scrolling through my phone, and I'd get that prickly feeling on the back of my neck, that feeling of being watched. I'd glance up, and there he'd be, a silhouette in his window, directly across the street, motionless. At first, I brushed it off. Coincidence, right? We live opposite each other. Our windows face each other. It's bound to happen. But then it happened again, and again, every single day. Morning, noon, night. Whenever I was in my living room, he was there. A dark shape against the dim light of his own house. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I'd close my curtains, but the feeling lingered. It felt like his gaze could burn right through the fabric. My own home, my sanctuary, started to feel like a fishbowl. I was the main attraction in his one-man zoo. After a week of this constant surveillance, my annoyance turned into a morbid curiosity. What was his deal? What did he find so fascinating about my boring life? So, I decided to play his game. I bought a pair of binoculars. Petty, I know, but I felt like I had to reclaim some sense of control. The first time I focused the lenses on his window, my breath caught in my throat. He wasn't just a silhouette. I could see him clearly. He was standing there, ramrod straight, wearing the same gray sweater he always wore. But it was his face that truly chilled me. He had this smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It was wide, stretched, and completely frozen. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and they were fixed directly on my window. On me. It was like looking at a mannequin. A horrifyingly realistic mannequin, posed to look like a man staring into my soul. For 3 solid weeks, this became our silent, twisted routine. I'd wake up, he'd be there. I'd make my coffee, he'd be there. I'd watch a movie, and he'd be my silent, smiling companion from across the street. My obsession grew. I documented his every non-move. I took pictures. I scribbled notes. 7:15 a.m. Still there. Hasn't moved. The smile seems wider today. 9:30 p.m. The street lights are on. They cast a shadow across his face. But the eyes still look right at me. I started losing sleep. Every creak of my floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I was convinced he was going to escalate. Maybe one day he wouldn't be in his window. Maybe he'd be on my porch. Or worse. I even called the non-emergency police line once. I tried to explain. My neighbor? He just stands and stares at my house. All day. All night. The dispatcher was patient, but I could hear the skepticism in her voice. Sir, is he on your property? Is he threatening you? No, I admitted, but it's unsettling. There was nothing they could do. Staring isn't illegal. Then came last night, the night everything changed. A storm had rolled in, a violent one. Rain lashed against the glass, and thunder shook the house. I was on edge, pacing my living room like a caged animal. And of course, Mr. Harrison was at his post. The rain distorted my view of him, making his smiling face ripple and warp. It was grotesque. I couldn't take it anymore. This silent war of attrition had to end. Fueled by a cocktail of fear and sleep-deprived rage, I grabbed my heaviest flashlight and my keys. I was going over there. I was going to confront him, demand to know what his sick game was. I threw on my coat, yanked open my front door, and plunged into the storm. The wind nearly ripped the door from my hand. I kept my eyes locked on his window as I stomped across the slick, wet pavement. I had to make sure he saw me coming. I wanted him to see me coming. But as I got closer, halfway across the street, something felt wrong. Even through the torrential downpour, I could see his face in perfect, horrifying detail. He hadn't flinched. He hadn't reacted to me charging out of my house. His unblinking eyes and his frozen smile were still locked in place. He wasn't looking at me on the street. His gaze was still aimed higher, at my living room window. My steps slowed. A cold dread, far colder than the rain, washed over me. I stopped dead in the middle of the road, water streaming down my face. If he wasn't watching me, what was he watching? Slowly, heart hammering against my ribs, I turned around. I looked back at my own house, at my own living room window. It was dark, except for the single lamp I had left on. Everything looked normal. The armchair, the bookshelf, the rain-streaked glass. I almost laughed at my own paranoia. Of course, there was nothing there. I was losing my mind. And then, a flash of lightning illuminated the entire street. For one blinding second, the world was as bright as day. My living room was lit up in a brilliance, stark white. And I saw it. It was standing right behind my armchair, where I always sat. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs long and jointed like a spider's. It had no face, just a smooth, pale surface. And it was bent over, its head tilted, peering out the window. It was looking directly across the street, at Mr. Harrison's house. My scream was swallowed by a deafening clap of thunder. I stumbled backward, falling onto the wet asphalt. My mind was a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated terror. The thing in my house. It had been there the whole time. Every time I felt those eyes on my back, it wasn't Mr. Harrison. It was this creature, standing just inches behind me. And Mr. Harrison, he wasn't a creep. He wasn't a predator. He was a statue, a sentinel. He had seen this thing in my house 3 weeks ago, and the sight had frozen him, literally. The shock, the pure horror of it, had locked him in place. His smile wasn't a smile of malice. It was a rictus of terror, permanently etched onto his face. He hadn't been watching me. He had been watching the thing that was watching me. The glass of the window was the only barrier between us and him, and between me and it. I don't know how long I lay there in the street. Eventually, I scrambled back to my feet and ran. I didn't go back to my house. I couldn't. I ran to the end of the block, and I called the police. I told them my neighbor was unresponsive. I told them he hadn't moved in weeks. I didn't mention the thing. How could I? They found him just as I'd seen him, standing at the window. The paramedics said it was a massive stroke or an aneurysm. Instantaneous. He had been dead for at least 3 weeks. Dead, but perfectly preserved by the cool, dry air in his home, propped up by sheer rigor mortis. A silent, terrified witness. I'm telling you this from a motel room 20 miles away. I can't go back to that house. I left everything behind. Sometimes I close my eyes, and I see it. The tall, thin figure standing in my living room. And I realize Mr. Harrison wasn't the one being watched. I wasn't the one being watched. We were both just part of the view for the thing inside the glass. Thanks for listening to my story on Cold Trails Diary. If this sent a shiver down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there, and maybe check who's standing behind you.